Yes, Alex, thank you for jumping on. How's everything going?
Yeah, good mate, not bad. How about you?
Yeah, all good, all good. Everything going fine at work and all that. You're at work today, yeah?
Yep, at work keeping busy, mate. Trying to keep as busy as possible. Well, work is definitely keeping me busy, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And you're keeping up with the routine, yeah? You actually keeping up with your habits and all that side of things now.
yeah. So, funnily enough, like some of the small habits that I took on, I didn't think that I would stick to, and they're probably the ones that I've been a lot more disciplined with. You know, I kind of mentioned to you beforehand about I tried to get into this habit of like habit stacking,
Mm.
and it's really worked. I was really surprised. I thought a few of them that I'd drop off with, but the main ones that I was concerned about, I've kept. It's maybe some of the others that I've not been as disciplined with, but I've set like a good sort of core routine now that I'm sticking to, which is good.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like I said, the small habits is where it all stacks up. You know, like people think you've got to do loads of stuff and this big things, big changes, but literally just small habits like drinking more water, getting steps in. I know you smash out the steps and all that anyway, so it's just like you said,
Mm.
stacking those up and keeping them going. So it's good to hear that you're still in the routine, keeping things going. But like just before you joined us, like could you briefly describe sort of where you were before starting with us? You know, like what struggles were you sort of facing physically, mentally?
Heavy, man, heavy. I was. That's the word I can describe. I was heavy. I kind of, obviously, as you'll know, like I hadn't been playing football for a few years because the injuries had just taken a toll on my body, and I wasn't able to do it. And I was just probably feeling a little bit sorry for myself in some aspects, and I just didn't really take any care of myself at all. Or I'd do like flash in the pan, sort of like, oh yeah, I'll do carnivore for the next 2 weeks, or I'll do this for the next 3 weeks, and there was no consistency of anything. And I just, when you have an off day, my off day would just turn into off 2 3 weeks, and I'd just go on a binge, and yeah, it was pointless. It was pointless, and I'd sort of, convinced myself that what I was seeing, like in my reflection in the mirror, wasn't actually true. Like it wasn't what I actually looked like. I'd still, in my mind, I was like, yeah, no, I'm still what I looked like 2 3 4 years ago. But yeah, it took a bit of a big step for me to be like, right, let's fix this now. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
Love that. Yeah, mate. Like obviously, when you first joined, we were sort of focusing on like small things, like we say, like the steps, things like that, hydration. You know, whole foods, like stuff like that. And yeah, I remember when we first started. Obviously, that was a bit of a task in itself. But then you started smashing out like cycling, things like that. You still doing all the cycling and things like that.
Yes, I'm cycling, not as much as I was. Obviously, the weather had dictated that, if I'm honest with you. But I've got a bike at home, which I use pretty much every day. I try and, even if I just get half an hour in before I go to work, or, if I'm watching the football at home, for example, I might watch the first half just on the bike, like trying to work it into my day like that. Steps is an easy one for me now. Like I average sort of like 17,000 steps a day, so that's not a problem at all. Diet fluctuates, I won't lie. There are times that it's relatively strict, and I'm adopting the whole 80-20 rule. There are other days that it's definitely 80-20 the other way around, I won't lie. But it happens, and I won't lie to you, when I do have the sort of like days where I'm like, oh cool, I've eaten what I shouldn't have eaten for too long of a period, I feel it now. Like I feel it in terms of how lethargic I am. I feel it in terms of like how bloated I get, and even things like gas. Like it really like you can see where the effect has on my body.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. Obviously, we're big on gut health now, and the gas and the bloating and stuff like that. It shouldn't be part of your daily sort of routine. It's not normal, to be honest. Like the foods that do that to us. But I'm glad that you obviously noticed, and we discussed this before, like how much of a difference it makes to your life when you actually do focus on doing the 80-20 and focusing on whole foods and nutrient dense foods compared to that. Like even I notice it when you have something a bit off plan, it's completely different, like the feeding and the energy that you have. But yeah, just touching on that, like sort of in regards to energy, but anything, performance, nutrition, what sort of specific changes did you sort of notice since starting the program, whether it be physically, mentally, or just daily sort of routine life?
Well, a bit of both, mate. Like from physically, I definitely had more energy, 100%. I think that came from putting a routine in place. I think it came from changing the way I was eating, also changing the timings that I was eating as well. So I've traditionally never really eaten breakfast. but now I might have something like small in the morning, like even if it's just a bit of fruit or whatever, and I think that sort of like, you know, sets me up for the right part of the day. I'm the kind of person that I have to work out in the morning. If I don't work out in the morning, it's a bit more difficult for me to, say, motivate myself to do in the evening. Also, I think if I set things off the right way in the morning, it sets me off for a good day. Whereas if I start to skip stuff in the morning, then I'm like, well, maybe I could do this and maybe I could get away with that. And I convince myself I might work harder in the evening, but it doesn't happen. But yeah, mentally, you know, obviously we started sort of October time last year, you know, and I had a lot going on with my personal life and stuff, and I think it gave me something to really focus on, which was great. And, you know, I think I really saw the results. What I think, you know, with the progress pictures and stuff as well, we saw like huge differences like relatively quickly. And, you know, you almost had to kind of get me to stay on track in the sense that like, right, don't get ahead of yourself. Like, you know, we've seen a big difference in a short space of time, but we need to maintain this. Don't expect this to go like, you know, from 0 to 100 when I kind of, you do get carried away when you start to see like real progress. So, yeah, I had a lot more energy. I felt a lot better. Clothes felt like they fitted a lot better. And I was just a lot more, I don't want to say I was a lot more focused, but I definitely felt like I was focusing on the right things a lot clearer.
100%. Like you said, you touched on it. Like, we made a lot of progress in a short space of time, and of course, yeah, we put the plans in place and get your nutrition on point, get you to your training plan and accountability and all that. But you stuck to that as well, mate, and like you saw the changes in your body, like, and how much it changed. But it's like, for us, it's not also just body in progress pictures, like the way that you felt as well, which is good to hear that obviously it did have an impact. You felt a little bit more focused, like it made changes to both your physical appearance but also your mental as well. And yeah, that's what we're big on, you know, like, and sustaining that as well, because at the end of the day, health is priceless, and it all plays a big part in your life and everything like that. So no, I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely,
it did have an impact. So like,
I think also like just touching on what you said, like when I mentioned before about some of the smaller habits is the things that I've been a bit more disciplined with. Like, yeah, my diet fluctuates from time to time, but some of those smaller habits that I put in place were, we mentioned about like doing some reading every day, or, for example, my routine now looks like I wake up every single morning, albeit, I'm a bit of a weirdo now and I get up at 5 o'clock every single morning now. Like, I've always been up there or thereabouts, but so I get up at 5 and then the first thing I do is try and set myself some time to like just do some mobility stuff, like get my body moving and some stretching, because as you know, that was a big thing for me, especially coming off the back of, quite a few injuries. So even if I get sort of 10 minutes of stretching in, I try and get a cycle in. Don't get it in every day on the stationary bike at home, but every single morning I have my green tea. I make that, get in the shower, finish my shower with like a cold shower, then I drink my green tea as I'm getting ready for work. I make sure that every single night before bed, like an hour and a half before bed, I have a chamomile tea as well, because I felt like I wanted something to try and help me sleep better, because my sleep was one thing that was really, really bad before. But now I sleep solidly 8 hours every night. So I'm sort of, end of the night, it's a chamomile tea to help me sleep. It's the journaling, which was a big one. Like, I was like, I'm not going to journal, like, this is silly. But I think since November, I've missed maybe 15, 16 days. Like, every single night, I just write down whatever, like, just about my day. I write down what was in my head and how I'm feeling in that moment. And I genuinely think that's helped me sleep a lot better, because I feel like I wake up and there's nothing on my mind at all.
100%. I think the journaling, like you say, you probably, when I mentioned it, probably thought, what is he going on about? Like, what's all this nonsense? But it genuinely does. Like, it just creates that relaxing environment, wind down routine. Like, if you're going to bed, scrolling on Instagram, TikTok, whatnot, of course you're probably going to stay up later because you might see something. One, because obviously the phone itself, but two, like, if you're just going for like the adrenaline from this TikTok scroll, like, you're just going to be there for hours. So like, yeah, I'm glad that you've incorporated that, starting with green tea, brilliant for the gut, and then you've got chamomile to help you like go to sleep. So like you said, it's little changes but has a massive impact on your day to day, because if you're sleeping better, like I always say, sleep's the best supplement you can get. So if you're getting a good night's sleep, then the rest of your day is going to be charged up even better. So yeah, like in regards to the coaching experience, what part of it do you think helped you the most? Obviously, then, like, was it nutrition, accountability, mindset?
I think accountability was massive. I think that's the one thing that had always been a big thing for me. Is like, you know, I can go to the gym 5 days a week, but you know, getting a good session in is it's not guaranteed. I think the fact that I was speaking to you pretty much every day, probably annoyingly on your part,
Yep.
I was sort of like messaging you, like whether it be through the app or WhatsApp, and I was kind of like, sending you clips of form for this, and you know, just trying to like make sure that I was getting the most out of it. So I think from my own perspective, it's probably the accountability and the communication that I had like with you the whole time. I think was essentially priceless, mate. Like, you know, like I said, everyone sort of knows the basics of going to the gym, and we know what we really should be eating. But you know, even with the meal plan, I remember like I didn't stick to the meal plan sort of 100%, like in terms of making the meals that in your like recipe book that you had, but I was eating things very, very similar. I was eating whole foods like continuously. I was, you know, really cutting out like processed sugars and refined foods, and I still do the same thing now. But I think ultimately the communication, just from like constant back and forth between ourselves, and the accountability that you held me to, that they were the two main things.
Yeah, I love that, mate. Like, I'm glad that it did help, because I think, you know, I always say you can have the best training program, best nutrition program, you can go online, you can search Google, you can find all these things, but at the end of the day, like, it's not tailored to you first and foremost, but also who's going to push you when you're not feeling it, or when you do fancy something else, or you don't know what you're actually doing. So I'm glad that the communication aspect was there for you, and it helped you massively, so I appreciate that, and I'm glad that it did. In terms of like the program then, sort of like, we focus on a lot of different things at Core Fitness, but what would you say was different from anything else you've sort of tried before?
I think the focus on things that you overlook. So I think, and it sounds weird, but like genuinely my gut health, and like how I felt, and you know, it was reflective in, you know, silly things like even my stool, you know, how often I'd use the toilet, or the consistency of it, and you know, things like that. Like, those were small little differences that I was noticing. You know, getting the right types of foods into my body, so that, you know, the right amount of fiber, and you know, not having sort of too many carbs, or eating carbs at the correct time for when I was doing stuff, not eating, you know, silly things sort of before bed and within a certain period, and just sort of like, I think I definitely feel a lot better within myself, like from a gut health perspective. Like, I feel healthier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I appreciate that, because obviously gut health is a big thing for us, and like the fact that you're talking about like even things like stool, like people don't even take that into consideration, and like things like fiber, you know, a lot of coaches will say like, yeah, hit your protein goal, hit your, you know, your carbs, your fats, and this and that, but no one really thinks about fiber and how it actually impacts you on the journey. So I'm glad that you did take that from the experience. So that's brilliant to hear, mate. So like, looking back, how do you feel about the sort of decision that you made to invest in yourself and come on board with Core Fitness?
I should have done it a lot sooner, mate. I should have done it a lot sooner. I kind of, you know, even if we just look at the sort of scales, I started, I think, at 106 kilos, and then the lowest I got to at one point was 83. You know, albeit we had a couple moments within that period where I'd gotten ill, so I'd lost a bit of, you know, additional weight that we didn't like sort of plan on. But for me, I think my target, like we discussed, was always like 85 kilos, between 85 and 87. I think that was, you know, for my body shape and my body type, was a healthy weight to be at. I'm not as sort of, the aim was never to be shredded. My whole thing when we started was I wanted to be fit, healthy and strong. I'm definitely a lot stronger. I'm definitely a lot fitter, and I definitely feel a lot healthier. I still want to drop some additional body weight, body fat, but that was one thing that, you know, was never a focus for me beforehand. So like, what I did was, you know, we focused on sort of dropping the weight sustainably and getting my health and fitness to a certain level. And then the second part of that plan was always to then go, right, how do we look at if we want to drop our body weight or body BMI, to a certain level, how do we get to that point and what does that look like? So I think those will be the stages now that, like, you know, we sort of go into. You know, I remember before, like, I never really felt 100% comfortable. Not comfortable taking my shirt off, but I was a little bit more conscious. And I remember I started just after I'd come off of holiday, and I was looking back at some of those pictures, and I was like, wow, like, I didn't realise I was that weight. And, you know, we went through periods where I was like, wow, I can really see my jaw, and wow, my face looks, you know, very, very skinny. So, like, the reaction came more from other people than it did from myself. And it wasn't until I had that and I was like, wow, this is actually really, really working. Like, on the outside, I knew how I felt on the inside, but because although I was quite big at 106, I held my weight quite well, if that made sense. So I never looked like 106 kilos. When I used to tell people, they were like, no way. I'm at about sort of 90 now, 91, 92. I'm fluctuating, but again, in the last sort of month or two, I'll be honest with you, like, I've dialed back on certain things purely because my work routine and life outside has dictated slightly different requirements from me. But, you know, in the last week or two, I've definitely gotten back into that habit of being a lot more strict on what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I love that, mate. Like, brilliant answer. Honestly, like, I think, like you said, like, work and things can get in the way, but when you're sort of in that routine and you're seeing it, it's massive, because if you're doing all these things and you don't see the progress, then it can be a bit demotivating. But obviously the fact that, you know, you're genuinely there, like, looking at pictures and things and seeing the differences compared to before is obviously massive, and it gives you more motivation to keep on going. So I'm glad that, you, like you mentioned it, both inside and out, you know, you were seeing the progress, which is brilliant. And I'm glad that, you know, you're sticking to a routine now as well, not letting, you know, like, work take over and things, because like we always say, you know, health should be the big priority for you. So it's good to see that you are making time for that now as well. So yeah, in terms of, like, someone sitting on the fence about joining us, not sure if it's the right time or if it will actually work for them with their routine, things like that, what would you sort of say to them?
I think there was always, with every sort of, like, personal trainer or, like, online coach or anything, I think the one thing that always sticks at people is, like, the financial aspect of it. And that was definitely a thing for me. But what I will say is that I felt as though I invested in myself at the right time. The idea is that you don't have to have an online coach for the next 3 years of your life. You know, someone like yourself should be in my life for sort of 3 to 6 months, you know, 6 to 9 months, whatever it may be. So I'm investing in you in as much as I'm investing in myself. And I think that was the big thing for me. I did that at the time that I felt like, right, this is when I need to do this. And I massively reaped the benefits from it. And it was a journey. Like, you know, I had highs and lows with you. And, you know, I think what some people may not realise as well is there were definitely elements where you went outside of your role for, like, what you sort of, like, sign up for with a client. Like, I remember there were times when, you know, I was having a really tough time, and I'd ring you and be like, look, mate, like, you know, I've had a bad week or I've had a bad few days, but this is what's going on in my life. And just that sort of, like, chat that we were able to have. And I think for men as well also, it can be quite difficult to open up to people, but the fact that I felt so comfortable sort of having that relationship with you, and I think you were very relatable to some of the things that I was maybe going through at the time or some of the challenges that I was facing. So I think that was a big thing for me. And, you know, I honestly, I don't want to say like what I invested was too cheap, but like it felt like, you know, I got more than my money's worth from sort of like working with you. And, you know, it's something that, although I said that, you know, you should only be in my life for sort of like 6 to 9 months, 3 to 6 months, is something that, you know, I've found that works for me in terms of like that accountability. This is why, you know, I'm looking to continue moving forward.
I love that, mate. No, I appreciate it, honestly. And I think the big thing for me is, yeah, like you said, like, it's not just, you know, nutrition, training, like, blah, blah, like, it's everything. Like, it's the whole package is, yeah, you will give you those plans, but if you're having a tough day or whatever, then, you know, like reach out, just give us a message, give us a call, like whatever. Like that's what we're here to do at the end of the day. It's a lifestyle.
Luke, you know, one of the really big things for me as well, mate, is obviously with my daughter. You know, yeah, as you've got to know, my daughter is my entire world, and I thought there were times when I was like, if I'm not looking after myself, one, what example am I setting to her in terms of like eating habits or just being lazy, sitting on my phone, that sort of stuff? And two, I want to make sure that I'm the best version of myself to be able to give her the best possible childhood. So like knowing that I'm going to go on holiday again with her in the summertime, like I need to know that I can keep up with her at all times, like running down the beach, building sandcastles, constantly in and out of the water, like little things that you overlook that, you know, yeah, just really small elements. And I think about her and the sort of example that I'm setting and some of the things that I want to do in her life. I need to be the best version of myself. You know, I think parents get to a point where they realise that there's only X amount of years that kids want to hang around with you and sort of like play with you and stuff, and you need to really make the most of that time, because it will come to a point where they get older and, you know, me and you have both been kids, and your friendship group sort of takes over, and you're not that arsed like with spending quality time with your parents. So yeah, that was a huge thing for me. Like as a dad, like yeah, it was, considering the time I was at in my life and what was going on, like it was the most necessary and most important thing for me to do, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
No, I love that, man. I respect the honesty as well. I think, like we always say, you know, like it's as much, yeah, okay, I want to get into the best shape for me, but like you say, if you've got kids, like being as healthy as you can for them to enjoy the time you can, like even picking them up or something like that, like something that you might not be able to have done before if you know you are overweight or you're not looking after yourself. So having the ability to do that and looking after yourself allows you to do those things, and I completely respect that, and I think that's an absolutely brilliant thing to take from the whole experience. So I love that. So like for you now, like Alex, what's the next thing for you now that you've built these habits, you've got a routine in place? Well, what's next for you?
Mr. Olympia, right? No. For me, man, it's all about maintaining and you know, just being the fittest version of myself that I can be at this age. Like I'm never going to be this age again. I think what really scared me at the beginning was when I weighed myself, and I have one of those digital scales that tells you all the different metrics within your body, and it gives you your metabolic age. And my metabolic age at the time was sort of 5 or 6 years older than what I was, and I was like, this cannot continue. So yeah, I think for me it's now about just being the fittest and healthiest version of myself as possible. Definitely adopting an 80-20 rule. I think 100% just doesn't work for me, and I think for most people it doesn't. And also, mate, I like chocolate. I like to eat cream eggs. Like I like a fizzy drink, you know, every now and then. I don't drink, so if I'm going out with friends or whatever, I'm not going to order a water. I'm probably going to get a Coke or something. So, you know, knowing that I can do that and stay within that balance. Listen, not every day is going to be 80-20. Some days are going to be 70-30 or 60-40. There are going to be the occasional day when it's 80-20 the other way around. And I'm happy with that now, because I know that I'm equipped enough to know what to do when I sort of go off track. Like, you know, it's a mindset shift that's really, really quick. So yeah, for me going forward is to be the healthiest and fittest version of myself, and to drop my body weight that little bit more, so I can compete my six pack with yours.
No, I love that, mate. Honestly, I love that. Yeah, it's about maintaining it now and sustaining it, isn't it? And like at the end of the day, like you said, you can do this for 6 to 9 months or whatever it is. But if you sort of leave, like the time whenever you do leave us, for example, like if you're not able to sustain it, then we haven't done our job properly. So I'm glad that, you know, you've built these habits, you've built the foundations, you've got the routine in place, and yeah, like you say, you can still enjoy yourself and have a cream egg or a Diet Coke, but as long as, you know, the majority of the time you know that, yeah, that doesn't make me feel my 100% best, then that's the main thing, because you know that, you know, yeah, I can enjoy this, but I need to get back on track tomorrow, and that's all it's about, you know, like sustainability, longevity. So I'm glad that that's something that you've took from the whole experience, that it isn't just a quick fix, it's a whole lifestyle thing. So yeah, love that. I appreciate your time, Alex, but Mr. Olympia soon come, mate. That's all. I love that. All right, mate.